Everybody, so today I'm going to be breaking down what, in my opinion, is one of the greatest scenes in all of Game of Thrones. It's definitely a personal favorite of mine. But before I get into the breakdown, just fair warning, spoiler alert, I'm going to talk pretty freely about all the characters involved in the show, so I'd hate to spoil it if you haven't seen the show. So if you haven't seen it, go watch the show, but if not, tread carefully. All right, and so just to kind of set the scene, so this scene takes place right after Robb Stark and his army had just beaten the Lannisters. There's the battle where they kind of sneak up on them in the middle of the night, and so that's kind of the scene that takes place right before this. And why I think that this scene is so good is, one, is incredibly well written. Two, it really gives a really good insight into just about every character that's involved. So let's start the clip, and then I'll stop it as it goes.
You're here to answer for your brother's latest treasons.
Your Grace, whatever my traitor brother has done, I had no part. You know that. I beg you,
Sir Lancel,
please.
tell her of this outrage.
So before we hear from Sir Lancel, let's just talk about Sansa right here. This epitomizes Sansa's entire experience in King's Landing and basically throughout the first portion of the show. I mean, Sansa probably has the most difficult experience of anybody in all of Game of Thrones. I mean, she was betrothed to Joffrey, married to Tyrion, who actually, Tyrion's not a bad guy, but in her mind is like the worst thing in the world, and then married to Ramsay, and also she's just caught up with Littlefinger like the whole time. Also, all of the worst people in the show, the three worst people, Littlefinger, Ramsay, Joffrey, she's involved with all of them, and they are all romantically interested in her at one point. She has the worst experience of any character in the show, and I mean this, you get it right here, literally pointing a crossbow at her while they are engaged. And so let's hear from Mr. Lancel.
Some vile sorcery, your brother fell on Stafford Lannister with an army of wolves. Thousands of good men were butchered. After the slaughter, the Northmen feasted on the flesh of the slain.
So what's so great about Lancel's little line there is just, obviously there's a lot of exaggeration. And I feel like what this scene was supposed to show, it shows a couple things. One, it shows that Lancel has literally no principles whatsoever. Like, he doesn't care. He basically sold out all of his principles and, got for his knighthood. But what it also shows is that I feel like back in, obviously this isn't set in like a real time period, but back in medieval times, it was so easy to kind of just spread misinformation and just lie about like what the people who you were fighting against were doing, because obviously Robb Stark did not have an army of dire wolves. He just had one dire wolf, and they didn't eat the flesh of the people they killed. But you could just spread information like that, and you hear the crowd, when Lancel says that, they're all like, oh, they're just traumatized. So it's just really funny. So let's keep going.
Killing you would send your brother a message. But my mother insists on keeping you alive. Stand. Sir, we'll have to send your brother a message some other way. Meryn.
So we get a little bit we get a lot of Joffrey in all this scene, basically. But I mean, Joffrey, obviously, probably arguably the biggest monster in all of TV history. I mean, it's between him and Ramsay Bolton. And we get this right here. Obviously, like I mentioned before, he's betrothed to Sansa at this point, and he's just torturing her over something that isn't really her fault. She had nothing to do with what happened to Robb Stark. He is just doing this to be cruel, to be mean to her. And really, it's really interesting because he actually liked Sansa at first, and it wasn't until Sansa saw him get kind of like overpowered by Arya that he just never liked Sansa after that. So I'm sure she really wishes that never happened. But let's keep going.
Leave her face. I like her pretty. My lady's overdressed.
So obviously, I mentioned we get a little insight to literally every character involved, and Meryn Trant is not excluded in this. Meryn Trant's awful. Like, he's a really kind of side character in the show and in the books, but he obviously a little bit like Lancel, he has no principles, and he's this example of, so the Kingsguard basically was supposed to be, ideally it's all the best knights of all the land, all the most noble people and everything, and not just the Kingsguard, but all the knights in general. Something that Game of Thrones kind of talks about is that knighthood isn't really something that's like to be proud of anymore. You have people like Meryn Trant who don't have any morals. They don't defend the weak. They don't, because ideally, like a knight would never do this, like in the Game of Thrones world. But obviously, they have gone so far away from that, and that's why you have characters like Sir Barristan Selmy, who kind of left the Kingsguard. Well, he's forced out of the Kingsguard, but he was really unhappy with how knighthood in general had gone. And so I just think it's really interesting to see Meryn Trant is just the epitome of what a knight should not be in the show, and but he is what they are.
Unburden her. If you won't rather start.
And just right there, obviously, you get, I mean, an incredibly hard scene to watch. I mean, this is one of the most visceral scenes in the whole show. You see Sansa just getting brutalized. It's absolutely horrible. But just with the little facial expression from the Hound there, you get the first, well, not even the first glimpse, but you get one of the early glimpses of the Hound actually being kind of a nice guy that has a heart for the little person, even though he really pretends not to care, but he actually kind of cares, but he's also a terrible person. You just in that little facial expression, you can see that he does not like what's happening to Sansa there, which is really interesting.
To hear us, we're going to have to speak louder.
What's the meaning of this?
And right there, you have Tyrion coming in. Right there, obviously, I mean, this is so brilliant. This scene is so well done, and it's actually really impressive because this scene is almost identical to how it's written in the book. So just so impressive that George R. R. Martin was able to write this. I mean, this scene, literally, the dialogue, almost everything, it almost exactly mirrors it. Obviously, there's some minor differences, but it's almost exactly the same. And so it's such a well-written scene, and you, as an audience, you love Tyrion after this scene because he is defending Sansa. He stops this incredibly visceral scene, this scene that you like have such a terrible reaction to. He puts a stop to it, and he comes in and he acts like he's running the show. So let's keep going.
What kind of knight beats a helpless girl? The kind who serves his king, imp.
Careful now. We don't want to get blood all over your pretty white cloak.
Someone...
Right there, you get this one line from Bronn sums up his entire character. One, he's a funny guy. You know, he's making a little fun. You know, he's just like, oh, your pretty white cloak there. Also, it shows that he is extremely confident in his ability, like with a sword. I mean, the Kingsguard is supposed to be like some of the best knights in the world. And Meryn Trant, obviously, he's not like the best swordsman, but he's supposed to be pretty good. You know, Bronn is not worried about Meryn Trant whatsoever. He, you know, basically is like, whoa, we don't want to start any trouble. It's just, I mean, Bronn is such an incredible character. And just in that one line, you get such a peek into who he is. I mean, he's extremely confident, funny guy, and pretty arrogant about his abilities, but it's probably justified. I think that Meryn Trant probably could, or Bronn probably could take Meryn Trant if it came down to it.
Something to cover herself with. She's to be your queen. Have you no regard for her honor?
I'm punishing her.
For what crimes? She should not fight her brother's battle, you half-wit.
Can't talk.
Right there, obviously Tyrion and Joffrey are talking, but you get a little bit more insight into the Hound, you know, good guy Hound. He's coming in, because at this point in the show, he really hasn't shown that he's a good guy. He is honestly still kind of a bad guy. I mean, later in the season, we get a confrontation between him and Bronn, and obviously we're supposed to be on Bronn's side, so, like, we have the Hound. He's, like, seems like kind of a bad guy, but, like, early on, the show does a good job of, I feel like, showing us that the Hound does have some kind of morals, or at least a soft spot for the weak. And right there, I mean, nobody is lower than Sansa at that moment, and the Hound comes, you know, he wraps her up. It's a small thing, but it you know, it shows a lot of the Hound's character.
Like that. The king can do as he likes.
The Mad King did as he liked. Has your Uncle Jamie ever told you what happened to him? No one threatens his grace in the...
So, right there, with that little line from Tyrion, it does an excellent job, because one, it mixes in kind of the lore of the show. I feel like what makes Game of Thrones so special is they are able to like kind of like simultaneously tell the story that's going on in the present and give us little bits of information for Robert's rebellion and everything that happened leading up to, you know, Robert and Ned, you know, kind of taking up arms against the Mad King, and then, you know, obviously the Mad King descending into madness, and then Jaime eventually killing him, you know, right before he's about to burn down King's Landing. None of that actually happens, but you get that story told to you through little tidbits like this, where Tyrion, obviously we knew that Jaime had killed the Mad King before this, but like it's spoken about like it really happened. Like you feel so immersed in the world because people bring up these events like they actually happened, even though it never actually took place on screen. And obviously it sets up a little foreshadowing to later in the show. I mean, people use what Tyrion is saying here as evidence against him in Joffrey's trial, so that's obviously really cool. We get this setting up to that all the way before that, and I mean, it's a cool, I mean, it shows the cleverness of Tyrion to kind of not overtly threaten Joffrey, but to basically say, you know, like, hey, you know what happened to the Mad King? He did everything. He, like, you know, he's saying Jaime killed him. Jaime, which is ironic, you know, obviously because Jaime's Joffrey's dad. But it's such a it gives us an excellent kind of glimpse into Tyrion as well, just because Tyrion, I mean, this is who he is, defender of the weak, you know, clever guy, does not like Joffrey.
Of the King's Guard. I'm not threatening the king, sir. I am educating my nephew. Bronn, the next time Sir Merwin speaks, kill him. That was a threat. See the difference?
I mean, that's probably one of the funniest sequences in the entire show. I mean, you this just because Meryn Trout's trying to act all tough. Nobody threatens the king, and then Tyrion's like, not even threatening him, and then he shows him what a threat is, and so obviously you get Tyrion, Bronn. This is probably Tyrion's highest point in the entire show when he's acting as Hand of the King in Tywin's place. This is his highest part in the show. I mean, it's what he enjoys the most. And after he is no longer Hand, you see that he's always kind of like yearning to be the Hand again. This is where he thrives, and it makes it so much more satisfying that Tyrion ends up being Hand in the end. But it's just so satisfying seeing Tyrion really in his element. I mean, he has Bronn behind him, ready to back him up, and it's just a funny scene, really. So let's keep going.
I apologize for my nephew's behavior. Tell me the truth. Do you want an end to this engagement?
I am loyal to King Joffrey, my one true love.
Lady Stark. You may survive us yet.
So I actually really like that little line there by the end from Sansa at the very end, just because it shows just a glimpse into her ability to kind of play the game a little bit. Obviously, she has so much more development, especially after she spends an extended amount of time with Littlefinger. But it just shows that, like, one, it shows she's pretty tough. I mean, she was put through the ringer there by Meryn Trout. It's just awful. And she's just, literally, her entire existence in King's Landing is just horrible. And it shows, I mean, she does not trust Tyrion. she does not think that Tyrion is safe years. But two, it shows her ability to, be tough and to keep herself safe. She is staying alive at this point in the show. And she does a great job at it. I mean, Sansa is a survivor. She's the epitome of a survivor in the show. And just a great glimpse into her ability to kind of lie. Just a little bit, they make jokes about it later in the show about her inability to lie. At least Littlefinger makes that a joke until she eventually becomes a really good liar. But I mean, this right here, I mean, obviously she was very clearly lying, but it shows that she has the will to do what it takes to keep herself safe. And she does that a little bit there. Obviously she's with Tyrion, not exactly the most dangerous person. But anyway, I really think that this is one of the best shows, or one of the best scenes in one of the best shows. Really just kind of a great job of showing you every character and, a little glimpse into them with not a lot. I mean, the scene's only about 3 minutes, but you get so much in it. And then also just, I mean, this is how you fall in love with a character, is you have them help someone who is in distress. And so obviously this is what sets Tyrion up as a fan favorite, is because you have the worst character in the show, Joffrey, doing something to the most helpless character in the show, Sansa, and you have Tyrion coming in and saving the day. That is how you make a fan favorite. That is what they did with Tyrion. Anyway, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment down below with what you guys think of my analysis and everything. And if you liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and have a great day.